Florida State obviously gets a massive win against the ACC, Clemson as well. Very, very high overview and not getting real deep into this because I want to take it a different angle. But Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Miami, whomever, kind of at the top of the conference, has a really good opportunity to make more money from the conference based on both succession initiatives and initiatives set up by just basically TV eyeballs. A 5-year weighted average of your last 5 seasons. That's really good for Florida State because even last year when they went 2-10, they were still 4th in the ACC in total viewership. And then over the 5-year span, they are number 1, right? And so that is not going to include 2021, but it will include 22, 23, 24, 25, and then now this, or it'll include 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25 this upcoming season. And so if the Noles can take care of business, they'll have some big matchups. You think about Alabama coming to town, Miami coming to town. They play Florida. They play at Clemson. They should do pretty well viewership-wise if they can make a bowl or do better than that. So some good news for Florida State there without a doubt. That's a huge win. They'll make more money in the short term. They'll also, Richie, be able to probably get out of the conference around that 2030 time frame when the buyout drops down to $75 million from the 572 or 571 or 574, whatever the number was, $500 million when they were in court arguing it. So a big win for Florida State. We will all agree on that. Here's my question for you. And I tweeted this and got some mixed responses to it. I think this puts a lot of pressure on Mike Norvell because I think the only reason he's still employed at Florida State, and I like Mike, I know you saw him yesterday at the game. Like, this is not anti-Mike Norvell like speak. I want him to work out here at Florida State long term. But I think the only reason he's still employed is because of his buyout. I think $65 million is the only way you survive 2-10 at Florida State University. I just saw North Carolina State just got rid of their basketball coach the year after he took them to the Final Four. So don't tell me that the year after Florida State finished number 5, they couldn't have gotten rid of their coach for going 2-10 as well. So I'm just telling you, I think that this puts more pressure on Norvell because Florida State is going to have an opportunity to make anywhere from $15 to $20 million more per year. And if they have another sub 500 year, all of a sudden the money for that buyout is available. You're getting that from the ACC, and the Wakes and BCs and Syracuses and those other programs in the country or in the conference are paying for that. And I know Florida State doesn't want to spend the extra money they're getting on a buyout, but another bad year, I think that money just all of a sudden becomes available, and it's basically coming from the ACC. So I don't know. I don't know if you agree with that, disagree with that, whatever. Not that there already wasn't a ton of pressure on Norvell, but I think this puts more pressure on him because I don't think there's going to be a problem of, oh man, we can't find the money next year. I think they know that the money's coming in if they take care of business even if they have another poor year, they're still going to be in the top 2 or 3 for a 5-year rolling, and they're going to make a lot of extra money this year. All right, just before we get back to the video, I do want to give some love to our friends over at Russo & Company. Chris Russo, a CPA since 2002. He's had his MBA. He's got a law degree. He's got 25 plus years of experience in a ton of different industries, such as entertainment, nonprofit, construction, restaurants, sole proprietors, and medical. Make sure that if you have a business or you need any tax consulting, tax advice, you haven't filed your taxes yet, he can do some personal stuff too, but truly, if you have a business, make sure that you're reaching out to him just so that he can take a look over what you've got. He'll do a free consultation if you mention double fries, no slaw, whether you need cash reconciliations, paywall processing, you need 1099 or W-2 preparation, any kind of policy or procedure implementation or drafting, income tax planning and preparation, he will take care of you. He's a Nole just like you and I are. He absolutely cannot stand the IRS. He will treat your money as if it's his own, and he will fight for every single cent of your money. You can get his info in the description. It's also russocoflorida.com or 407-636-1152. Appreciate Chris Russo for his support.
Yeah, you talk about, Mike Norvell was a huge benefactor of a unfortunate chain of events for Florida State, starting with Alabama getting into the college football playoff over Florida State, and then Nick Saban retiring, because I think Norvell still gets an extension and a nice raise, but not to the level he got with that opening job at Alabama, where he was, according to Alabama's own athletic director, one of the top 2 candidates that they had in mind. So I think Mike Norvell definitely benefits from that. But yeah, with this, it's great news for Florida State. And honestly, it would have been great if we had just fought this whole thing out and just won that lawsuit outright and it could have jumped to the SEC or Big Ten. But now, it gives you a couple years to kind of find your way. And 2029, 2030 sounds a heck of a lot better than 2036, which is what it initially was for Florida State, Clemson, Miami, North Carolina, whoever it may be. And it sounded almost like, this is ESPN and the ACC saying, we just want to hold this conference together for a few more years as we plan for the future of what college football might look like. But I do think it does put a lot of pressure on Mike Norvell because, to your point, I'm shocked any coach could survive 2-10. But that buyout was just ridiculous, especially when you have all this money tied up in lawsuits and you're potentially looking to, pay the, grant of rights fee to get out of the conference. It just financially did not make sense. If it wasn't for the money, the financial aspect, I don't think Mike Norvell's the head coach right now. To your point, we both want him to succeed. He's an awesome guy. I got to chat with him a little bit last night at Ham's last game, and I think he can turn this thing around. I think he made some extreme changes on his staff that was very much necessary. And if that works out for him, this could be quite the redemption story for Mike Norvell. But Mike, man, don't come out and go 5-7 now, because that becomes an issue at that point.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody about that today, and we've talked a lot about the schedule and what our expectations are this year, and when I really think about it, I think about the fact that Vegas has set your win total at 7.5, right? And the juice is on the under, right? So they're kind of saying it's more likely that you win 7 games than 8 games, but you're supposed, and last year we were supposed to win 9 or 10, right? So they're not always right? But they don't usually miss a couple of years in a row on a team. They balance that out pretty well. And so when I think about it, I think, okay, well, I think 6-6 probably saves his job, right? But 7-5 certainly does. And then 8-4, I think at 8-4, you'd be pretty happy. No, it's Florida State. You're not happy with 8-4, but I think you'd be like, all right, well, yeah, we understand if I offered you right now 8-4 before we even play games, I mean, most people would say like, yeah, I'll take that. Like after last year, I'll take it. But if you were to somehow win 6 or less, I mean, you're pretty significantly underachieving at that point, right? Like you're talking. I mean, there's 4 games that I think Florida State is absolutely going to be an underdog in. Barring something really crazy happening, they're going to be an underdog against Alabama. They're going to be an underdog against Clemson. I'd say it's probably pretty likely they're an underdog when Miami comes to town. Now, Miami gets blown out by Notre Dame, gets blown out by Florida. Florida State beats Alabama. Yeah, that scenario could lead to Florida State being favored in that early season matchup. I'm not predicting any of those 3 things. I think Miami probably splits with Notre Dame and Florida. We probably lose a bit, so most likely Miami's going to be favored. And then at the very end of the year, is there a chance that Florida's, 3-8 and we're,
no,
7-4? I'm just saying, like the scenario for you to have to be favored at Florida would be you'd have to have like 2 or more wins than them. So you'd have to be going into the swamp with 7 or 8 wins, and they've got like 5 or 6. In that scenario, yeah, maybe you would be favored at Florida. I don't think either one of those things happen, though. I don't think you're going to the swamp with 8 wins. I don't think they're coming to that game with 5, right? And so, yeah, so I think you're an underdog in 4 games. You might be an underdog on the road at Raleigh. And then really, I don't know that you're an underdog in another game. Maybe at UVA. I think you're probably a slight favorite at UVA unless Bama just absolutely beats your brains in. But I think you're a slight favorite at UVA. I think you're a slight favorite at Stanford. And then I think you're a favorite in all the home games. Unless, again, Virginia Tech, like that's late in the year. If the wheels have really fallen off, then things might change by then. But, you can't be losing games that you're supposed to win is what it comes down to at the end of the day. Like you need to take care of business. And if they only win 5 or 6, then Florida State hasn't taken care of business, right? And so, yeah, I think that puts a lot more pressure on him because the safety net of the buyout, to me, this is my opinion. I don't know how Michael Alfred's going to spend money, but the safety net of the buyout seems to be somewhat gone with the additional money that Florida State should make this year. Even if they go 2-10 again, they're going to be top 5 in views. I'm just telling you that right now. Like that might be a screwed up system, but if they go 2-10 this year, they're still going to be top 5 in eyeballs in the ACC. That's just one, how big the brand is. 2, people like to hate watch, and 3, the rest of the ACC sucks that bad, right? Miami will have better viewers, Clemson will have better viewers, but they'll still be top 4 or so. So I don't know. I think it's more pressure on him for sure.
Yeah, so I haven't looked at Miami's schedule, but I'm not confident they're going to have better viewership. Florida State, that Alabama game is going to have ridiculous viewership. I saw they announced it'll be at 8:30 kickoff at night, which is exciting. But for me, I'm not excited about it, but I'll still make it work.
It's a Saturday night, man. Come on.
I know. Trust me. But yeah, no, I think that and kind of what you said though is part of the biggest problem from Norvell, and one of his biggest challenges is he will most likely be an underdog to the 3 teams on the schedule. Well, really the 4 teams on the schedule that Florida State fans care the most about, when Bama, Clemson, Miami, and UF. You cannot go 0-4 in that stretch. I mean, if you win the other 8, but you lose those 4 games, people are not going to be excited about that season, even though we're talking about 8 wins. Hey, that'd be great after a 2-win season, but 8-4 losing to those 4 teams, that'd just be a bummer of a season. Be like, okay, who did you beat? And you'd look at the schedule and say, no, we didn't beat anybody, but hey, we did win 8 games. I think it definitely saves his job for another year, but at the same time, of those 4 games that just mentioned, ideally you'd love to see him split it, but win just one of those games. You got to find a way to it. He does not have the fan support that he used to have after 13-0. But that happens when you go 2-10. So
Sure.
I do think there's a lot of pressure on him. But yeah, those 4 games, if you go 0-4 in those, his seat gets extremely hot. I'll say that.
Well, I think if you go 0-4 in those, the caveat to that might be to play devil's advocate. Those could be 4 really good teams, right? Miami's expectations this year are going to be to make the playoffs. Clemson's the ACC favorite. Bama's got odds to, top 12 odds to make the playoffs. And Florida is, I think, one of the better teams that's going to go 7-5. I think they have a lot of talent on their team, and you're playing that game in the Swamp. So I'll say this: if you went 8-4 and lost those 4 games, but you just look competitive, right? You didn't look competitive against any good teams you played this year. If you just take that step of looking competitive, you lose a 7-point game to Miami, who goes on to the playoff. You lose a 10-point game to Bama, who goes on to the playoff. You lose a 14-point game to Clemson, who wins the ACC and is a top 4 seed. I don't know that, that doesn't upset me too much. Now, at the end of the day, conceding rivalries and all your big games before the season even starts, sucks. I get that. But if you look more competitive, I think that's a big deal for Florida State this year. On Miami, I do. Now, if Florida State goes 2-10, Miami will beat them in viewership again this year, right? But if Florida State can hold their own and win 7 or 8 games, then yeah, I think they'll have higher viewership for sure. Miami's schedule, though, they do play Notre Dame on a standalone game, a Sunday night, so at home.
Yeah.
So they're gonna pull in a massive number for that. Notre Dame, Catholics, convicts in Miami, so that's a home game for them. It counts for the ACC stuff. I mean, that's gonna pull similar to what Florida State LSU did. That's going to be a massive number because it's a standalone game. They also play on the road at SMU. I think a lot of people are going to be interested in that. Obviously, they play Florida State. We both split that one. And they play Louisville as well, which I think will be a big one for them. So I think their games will do pretty well. And it's kind of the thing where if Miami's winning, I think people tune in. Their fan base is very fickle. And so they tune in more when they're winning. And if they're winning, more people hate watch them. I'll be the first to admit I watched every single Miami game this year because I hate watched them. So I think when they're winning, people also like to hate watch them. When they're losing and they're 5-5, people are just like, their season's already over. Who cares? So I do think it's one of those brands that people kind of like how when the SEC's in the national championship, you may hate the SEC, but you might watch it because you want to see it. So we'll see. I mean, at the end of the day, if they show the strides that we think they can this year, then I think he'll be fine. But I think the money's going to be there if they do have to make some unfortunate decisions. So